Welcome to the Good and Basic podcast, a long-form conversation between Joseph and Joseph of the YouTube channel Good and Basic, wherein we discuss the projects that we do and the thoughts that we're thinking, and occasionally a little bit of current events. And today we are revisiting a topic from last week. We are reading through a document that is called the Techno-Optimist Manifesto. This was dropped a couple of weeks ago on the Andreessen Horowitz blog. Andreessen Horowitz is a venture capital firm that is very excited to promote emerging technologies. And so it seems to fit very nicely with their brand to put out this Techno-Optimist Manifesto. And last time we managed to get through about a third of the document, giving our thoughts and reactions to it. I've read this once before, but other Joseph Fisher, has not yet read it, so we're going to get his unfiltered responses as we go. And I think the plan is going to be very similar to last time. We're going to read roughly a paragraph at a time and then discuss it, and there's a lot of ideas here. Joseph, do you want to quickly recap what we did last time?
Sure. So the first four headings are, and it's a manifesto, right? So that the headings and the language is very...
Manifesto-y?
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, that's, I think, a fair characterization. Lies, truth, technology, and markets. We spent quite a bit of time talking about technology and markets in particular. And it looks like the next heading is the techno-capital machine. Shall I go forward?
Absolutely. Let's jump right in.
Okay. Combine technology and markets, and you get what Nick Land has termed the techno-capital machine, the engine of perpetual material creation, growth, and abundance. We believe the techno-capital machine of markets and innovation never ends, but instead spirals continuously upward. Comparative advantage increases specialization and trade. Prices fall, freeing up purchasing power, creating demand. Falling prices benefit everyone who buys goods and services, which is to say, everyone. Human wants and needs are endless, and entrepreneurs continuously create new goods and services to satisfy those wants and needs, deploying unlimited numbers of people and machines in the process. This upward spiral has been running for hundreds of years, despite continuous howling from communists and Luddites. Indeed, as of 2019, before the temporary COVID disruption, the result was the largest number of jobs at the highest wages and the highest levels of material living standards in the history of the planet. The techno-capital machine makes natural selection work for us. Sure.
In the realm of ideas, finishing that sentence, there's a lot to unpack there. I think it's kind of funny that he's mixing communists and Luddites, and I don't think it's entirely unfair. Although, yeah, hammer and sickle. One thing I find interesting about the Luddites is I'm not sure that the Luddites were ever, strictly speaking, against technology. I think they were mostly against the aggregation of technology and the let's see here, the drastic scale to which the comparative advantage of the technology altered kind of a power dynamic in the market. It wasn't the technology itself, it was who owned it. That was the problem. And I think the communists are pointing to that as well, although the thing that he says right at the end of that paragraph, that just in 2019, right before the COVID pandemic, the result was the largest number of jobs at the highest wages and the highest level of material living standards in the history of the planet. I mean, that's a true statement. The crazy thing is there are more people now than there have ever been. And at the same time, the people are richer than they've ever been. And that is kind of wild. You'd expect that with more people, there would be fewer stuff to go around, a la Thanos, but that's not how it works. And the reason it's not how it works is technology and markets.
Yeah. I don't have any reaction yet, because no, I think that's very interesting. And at some point you want to expound on Luddism. I don't have another reaction yet, because I guess he's, he's saying mostly the things that I expected him to say and the things that I suppose I largely think are pretty correct. So,
yeah, you can kind of fuse together his paragraph on technology and his paragraph on markets and get how he feels about technology operating in markets. I'm going to jump in and read the next paragraph right now. The techno-capital machine makes natural selection work for us in the realm of ideas. The best and most productive ideas win and are combined and generate even better ideas. Those ideas materialize in the real world as technologically enabled goods and services that never would have emerged de novo. De novo from the beginning or from new. One thing I find really interesting about this idea of natural selection is one criticism that's frequently labeled against markets from the more communist types is that it's social Darwinism. And the ideas of social Darwinism, I mean, kind of raises the specter of eugenics, this idea that you're going to apply natural selection in a population of people. And what I think is really interesting about what the author here is highlighting is that markets operate by natural selection, but not with people, with ideas. One thing that you and I both studied philosophy, at least a little bit in college. I did something like a minor, and I believe you did roughly the same. And in order to have a really good philosophical discussion, it's almost like a Pokemon battle where you put your ideas out there and the ideas battle, but it's not you yourself that's getting punched in the face, if that makes sense. And that ability to separate yourself from your ideas enough to let the ideas survive or die in front of you is challenging because we tend to identify really strongly with our ideas, our ideals. And this ability, this idea of the market kind of requires you to put your idea as something separate out there. When you create a company, I mean, the company is an orienting idea that a group of people stand for. It's an idea that you can make this product or service at such and such price and sell it and potentially derive some benefit from it. We call that benefit of profit. And maybe you're not able to provide that good or service, at a price point that people actually want to buy it. In which case, your idea, this company, dies. But you yourself, as the employee or entrepreneur running this thing, can then go on to try out a different idea, a different company. A lot of the statistics I hear about entrepreneurship are pretty dismal, that more than half of new companies fail. But what that doesn't take into account is that the people behind those very frequently will start another one. And so if you've got 1 and 2 odds, and then you play the game more than once, you have a really good shot of winning.
I guess my reaction is that this is a heavily idealized view of markets. There are many reasons, I think, why the best ideas do not win and the most productive ideas do not win. This is far from the best example. But for instance, I think a lot of TV really is not much of a value add, right? Like, is the volume of TV and the quality of TV out there, is that really like the best ideas, the best services, the best kind of life? Like, I don't know. But does it win in the market? Well, yes, it does. In part because I think people have, not always the best desires. I certainly don't.
Yeah,
But
that's a
that's true
really,
for other
really
people.
good point.
So, and not to mention that there are a variety of ways by which new ideas can be squished, a variety of ways that new good ideas fail to enter the market due to sort of like natural monopoly effects or things like that. See, for example, the way that, I'm not going to build a real sophisticated argument here, but if you look at the practices of Microsoft and Apple, I think, and the ways that they exercise control over their user bases, you know, is the free market truly like this perfectly lubricated machine that he seems to portray it as, where the most productive ideas always win and the better ideas always win? Uh, this is a heavily idealized version of something that is, substantially true.
It is. One thing that I find really interesting is that whenever you talk about the best anything, the subsequent discussion is either going to have an explicit or an implied definition of best. And free markets operate on the subjective theory of value, which means the customer is right because the customer, that's the standard we're using to
Well,
measure rightness.
it, it
And so
mm,
if the customer wants cocaine,
mm,
then strictly speaking,
mm,
the customer wanted cocaine. Or if the customer wanted trash television, as in your example.
yeah, I
The
mean,
the one place where I think that this does have moral superiority over the other options, right? So worst except for all the others, right? There's this great quote from Winston Churchill where I believe it was in relation to democracy, where he said, democracy is the worst system except for all the others, meaning it has its problems, but it's superior comparatively to the other systems that have been tried. Markets tend to operate in a very similar way to that. So, one downside of markets is that they tend to give us what we want, whether or not what we wanted was good for us. What we wanted apparently was endless streams of empty carbs with lots of sugar and fat, and nonsense television that, frankly, can actually make you dumber.
well, and
Uh,
just it's not just a demand
but
issue, right? There, on the supply side, there's also an incentive to feed people things, both literally and metaphorically, feed them things that are not that great for them, right? See, for example, like social media, right? It's not just that people want social media; it's that social media companies want you to want social media and have some tools at their disposal to manipulate you to do that.
I think
It,
that, though, goes back to the demand side. So the Facebook example is a really good one. Social media wants you to spend lots of time on their platform so that they can have your eyeballs on the page so that they can sell that time with your eyeballs to advertisers. And so they're incentivized to make their product as addictive as possible. Now, to make something addictive, you have to feed into what the customer desires by giving them more of that, whether or not it's good for them. And it
that's
all
partially true,
traces
but
back to
partially not
that.
true.
If
It
what
does
you
not. It does
desired
not all
was
trace back to that.
if what you desired fundamentally was deep, meaningful interactions and educational content, then Facebook's algorithm, in order to make itself more addictive, would give you more of that. The alternative, though, the reason why this giving you what you subjectively want, whether or not it's good for you, is still actually pretty darn good, is because the alternative is forcing people to eat their vegetables. You have to enter in a degree of force in order to get around people's preferences not being what's good for them. And that force, I at least think, is usually a negative thing. There are some relationships where force is appropriate, parents to children, for instance, at least in a limited degree. Obviously, that can go way too far quickly, but there is some degree of, no, you really do need to put on your shoes when we go outside in the cold, and yes, you really do need to put on a coat, and yes, you really do need to eat your vegetables and get your shots. So in that relationship, I think some force makes sense, but peer to peer, out in the free world as a bunch of adults, there's not a lot of force that's appropriate.
So I don't disagree. And in fact, I agree on that, on the point relative to force. But I do think you're underestimating, and I think that the author of this is underestimating the degree to which supply side forces shape and teach us our desires. In large part, as I understand it, this is what the tobacco lawsuits were about, was that tobacco companies, even though they knew that tobacco was causing various health problems, they were teaching people to like them. Now, I'm not denying that there's agency on the demand side as well, right? But I just do not think that anyone should have a starry-eyed view that the market and that sellers in the market just perfectly serve up exactly what what consumers spontaneously and of their own accord want. The supply
I
side of
have an
any exchange
example
teaches us and
to support
shapes
that
us,
idea.
and it does. And I think that free market people, very broadly speaking, and I am one of them. I think, generally speaking, but I think that free market people like Andreessen Horowitz, this firm, are underestimating. They are not properly accounting for supply side forces. Ironically enough, because anyway, they're not properly accounting um, for the way in which a seller can shape the desires and choices of a consumer. Um, Not to an infinite degree, but to a substantial degree that should not be ignored.
Yeah, essentially, it's the danger of manipulation and also of constraining choice. So one example that I think supports your position here is I was in a bookstore a year or two ago, and I found myself insulted looking at their selection. I mean, there was this massive aisle of teen vampire romance novels, and the bookstore was laid out in such a way that their branding was for it was Barnes and Noble. Their branding is all about looking really nice and making you feel really smart for being a book person and building some of your identity around being a book person. Then I was looking at the book selection and saying, okay, what kind of books are here? And I went to their philosophy section, and it was half a shelf. And more than half of those books on that shelf were trying to make connections between pop culture and philosophy, like philosophy in The Lord of the Rings, philosophy in Star Trek. And there's some stuff you can do with that, but like I only found one copy of a book by Plato and not a lot of substance there. And I looked in the religion section, similar thing, like a shelf, two shelves for golf, and then a massive aisle for the teen romance vampire novels. And I was thinking about, let's say a person comes in here and looks around and sees this huge variety of books. It is very possible to form an idea of what kind of books are out there in the universe from what is in this bookstore. The bookstore is representing itself as having a broad selection, and really it's not. And I was wondering, the chicken and egg thing, the bookstore is bringing in books that they think the people want to buy. So they could just be responding to the demand of the area. But the demand of the area, like you were saying, is also shaped by what they believe is out there from their experiences in this bookstore. And so it could artificially skew the reading population that go to this bookstore toward reading more of the teen vampire romance novels that are complete empty fluff garbage and not grappling with real culture or ideas.
Or to grappling with sort of a weakened, diluted form of culture, as you described.
Yeah.
The philosophy books that
exactly.
are sort of repackaged pop philosophy.
So chicken and egg, but there's also feedback possible there.
Sure. Yeah, no, I agree. And I just have to say in passing, I am so surprised. I was confident that you were the demographic that reads teen vampire novels. And I'm sure that I and all our listeners are shocked to hear that that's not your thing. So
yeah, not my thing. Can't say that is what I go to the bookstore for.
Shall I continue?
Absolutely.
Were we at Ray Kurzweil?
Yes.
Ray Kurzweil defines his law of accelerating returns. Technological advances tend to feed on themselves, increasing the rate of further advance. We believe in accelerationism, the conscious and deliberate propulsion of technological development to ensure the fulfillment of the law of accelerating returns, to ensure the techno-capital upward spiral continues forever. We believe that the techno-capital machine is not anti-human. In fact, it may be the most pro-human thing there is. It serves us. The techno-capital machine works for us. All the machines work for us. We believe the cornerstone resources of the techno-capital upward spiral are intelligence and energy, ideas, and the power to make them real. Ooh, so I have a reaction to that.
Okay.
Specifically, that paragraph, we believe that the techno-capital machine is not anti-human. So again, this is just, and it's sort of what you expect from a manifesto. It is a heavily idealized version of something that I do, largely agree with, but it's still heavily idealized. Right. So, and notice there's sort of two contentions in here, right? One is that the techno-capital machine, in other words, sort of like, at least as I understand it, technology in conjunction with markets, is not anti-human, and then also the machines themselves are not anti-human, right? Both assertions are in there. The techno-capital machine works for us. All the machines work for us. I don't know. It's just heavily idealized, right? There is a way in which like machines, like big electrical transformer stations that I don't really understand work for me in some sense, because right now I'm using electrical equipment that is powered by those, etc. But I don't know if all the machines work for me. For instance, if a gun shoots me, I'm just really not confident that it's working for me. I'm certainly not included in that us. Um, to the degree that I don't understand the technology that I use, uh, there's questions about whether or not it works for me, right? Like I fundamentally don't understand how my refrigerator works, but it still kind of works for me until it stops working. I don't know about that. There are some questions here. Then the larger claim here that the conjunction of technology and markets works for me. Boy, I hate to bring up the same tired example, right? But like social media, most TV, does it work for me? Ugh, kind of. Sometimes. Not all the time. I certainly don't think so. And there are ways in which it does work for me, right? I'm not denying this contention entire, but yeah, I'm just running up against like I want to agree with you, but this is just so rosy and starry eyed, so optimistic, so overlooking of any possible problems which do exist and which are there, that I'm like, ugh, ugh.
Yeah. The two lines are the techno capital machine works for us. All the machines work for us. My two questions are these: who is us, and is it the same us in both of those statements? Um, and you were kind of highlighting the localness
It's
of the
Andreas and
benefit of the
Horowitz,
machine.
Joseph. It's Andreas and
Yeah,
Horowitz. They're speaking in the first person.
speaking in the first person. So yeah, I mean, venture
Techno
capital
capital
firm interested
machine
in
works for
technology.
Andreas and Horowitz. All the machines work for Andreas and Horowitz.
Oh dear, oh dear. Well, we can either join Andreas and Horowitz, or else I guess be on the outside of that us. Oh dear.
You will be
Um,
assimilated.
yeah, it's interesting though. I mean, there's a novel. A lot of the issues that we're discussing here about the march of technology or progress. I mean, the word progress is a very loaded term now, and the idea that progress is associated with technology is something that many people believe. Obviously, the writers of this manifesto do, but not everybody does. And this rhetoric where progress is associated with technology is old. It's really old. There's a Charles Dickens novel called Hard Times. And the subject of this novel is a bunch of characters. I don't like the way Charles Dickens writes. He tends to, in my opinion, make his characters too much into caricatures of people. And then I find him less insightful than, say, somebody whose characters are messier, like Shakespeare. Shakespeare's characters are just messy, lots of mess. So it's easier for me to see them as human. But there's a notable exchange where there's a student at a school in England in this Hard Times Charles Dickens novel who is being quizzed on the progress of England and how much progress has been made. And she's being made to memorize statistics of how much coal and iron have been produced and how much GDP has gone up. And she says she was asked a quiz question on whether or not the state of England had improved, and she said, "Well, I don't know. I guess that would depend on whether any of that GDP went to me." And I think that is actually a fairly substantive critique. It's easy to say that we have improved when you take the kind of macro scale statistic of, say, GDP growth or absolute wealth, but that doesn't include everyone. Not everyone is part of that us. And I think there is a moral duty to try to expand the us that is benefited by the machines and by the techno capital upward spiral. And I don't think that happens by itself all the time.
Should we
Hmm.
go on to the next one?
Let's do it. The next paragraph is called Intelligence. I'll go ahead and start reading this one. We believe intelligence is the ultimate engine of progress. I already know that this is going to be about AI. We believe intelligence is the ultimate engine of progress. Intelligence makes everything better. Smart people and smart societies outperform less smart ones on virtually every metric we can measure. I wonder what he means by smart people and smart societies. Smart people, he's probably referring to IQ data, and smart societies, he's probably referring to the ideas
I would
upon which
guess
those societies are
education
run.
level.
Really?
I
That's a
bet
little more egalitarian.
I would, yeah. Well, I don't know, right? Your less favorable interpretation certainly might be right. I don't know.
Oh, well, it's open to both. Intelligence is the birthright of humanity. We should expand it as fully and broadly as we possibly can. We believe intelligence is in an upward spiral. First, as more smart people around the world are recruited into the techno capital machine. Second, as from that, I can kind of read that the authors are very much in favor of immigration to pursue educational opportunities and work at tech firms. Second, as people form symbiotic relationships with machines into new cybernetic systems such as companies and networks. Third, as artificial intelligence ramps up the capabilities of our machines and ourselves. We believe we are poised for an intelligence takeoff that will expand our capabilities to unimagined heights. We believe artificial intelligence is our alchemy, our philosopher's stone. We are literally making sand think, which is kind of a cool thought. We believe artificial intelligence is best thought of as a universal problem solver, and we have a lot of problems to solve. We believe artificial intelligence can save lives if we let it. Medicine, among many other fields, is in the Stone Age compared to what we can achieve with joined human and machine intelligence, working on new cures. There are scores of common causes of death that can be fixed with AI, from car crashes to pandemics to wartime friendly fire. We believe any deceleration of AI will cost lives. Deaths that are preventable by the AI that was prevented from existing is a form of murder. What do you think of that?
Oh, I'm kind of waiting for the end of the whole section because I'm just you can't see me rolling my eyes, but there's been a lot of it.
Okay. We believe in augmented intelligence just as much as we believe in artificial intelligence. Intelligent machines augment intelligent humans, driving a geometric expansion of what humans can do. We believe augmented intelligence drives marginal productivity, which drives wage growth, which drives demand, which drives the creation of new supply, with no upper bound. That is the end of that section called
Okay,
intelligence.
so I just do not even know how to respond to this other than this is stupid. But let me try to do it in a slightly more sophisticated way. Right. So the reason why this whole section, in my view, is stupid is not because it has no bad, excuse me, is not because it has no good ideas in it. Right. I do think that artificial intelligence has a lot of potential. I do think it's a cool idea that maybe we're making sand think. I do think that augmented intelligence is a great, right, like a notebook. Writing down things in a notebook is augmented intelligence. I think it's a wonderful thing, right? But this is really the reason why I just am disgusted, I think, by this section is because it is not a serious engagement with any of the issues surrounding intelligence, artificial intelligence, or augmented intelligence. Now, that is partially a weakness of the genre. The genre is a manifesto. And the core idea behind a manifesto is not to engage seriously with the ideas that you're talking about. It's to convince people by writing things in all caps. And I have very, very, very little patience for that. Right, and it underlies a lot of my slowly simmering and increasing frustration with this whole document. Is that it is not a serious engagement with these ideas. It's just a toddler banging on a keyboard in all caps. When I say a toddler, I'm sure they're very intelligent, and there are lots of great ideas in here, but there's no serious discussion of those ideas. It's just a repetition of the ideas that they like. Right. So, a few things going down, greatest hits problems with this, so it's not greatest hits, it's greatest problems, but you know what I'm saying. Right. So, um, like, we're not at all worried about the problems that could come up with AI. We're not at all worried about AI making decisions about life and death. We're not at all worried about an AI doing the trolley car experiment. Like, there was a major blockbuster movie that came out last year, 2 years ago, Dune, right, where there was literally an intergalactic, there was an interstellar jihad launched against thinking machines, because they realized that the more the machines thought, the less the humans thought. And we actually do find that to be true, at least, in some ways, right? That memory suffers in large part because everything is available through Google. And I'm not saying that we need to get rid of Google. I'm saying that there are issues here. And I'm saying that, Andreas and Horowitz, whom the machines serve, is just not dealing seriously with these issues or even raising them. And so I kind of just discard the whole thing. And I'm like, look, if I want to think about AI, if I want to think about augmented intelligence, you're not the person who I'm going to talk to because you're blinded, and you're not looking at any of the issues, uh, at least not in this document. So that is the end of my rant. I'm just disgusted. You can point out some more. Yeah, well, we haven't even gotten to the issue of saying, oh boy, deaths that were preventable by the AI that was prevented from existing is a form of murder. Like, stay in your lane. Give money to startups and quit making like legal and ethical conclusions like this, in one throwaway sentence, with no discussion. Just
It
this is the
is.
kind of section to which I could both speak for hours, but to which spending that time would be an utter waste. Because I would have to build their arguments for them and then refute them. So I'm just done. I just can't. No. In the words of Gen Z, I can't even. In the words of the older generations, well, I never.
Well, I never. I think that idea that you'd have to build their arguments in a more coherent form first, just so that you could have something that wasn't a straw man, because as you're describing the form limitations imposed by a manifesto, where the target of a manifesto is not those that disagree with you, not really. The target audience of a manifesto is those that already kind of agree with you, but you want to instill in them a degree of almost religious zeal for that idea. It's choir preaching, and it's also designed to, in this line about AI, stopping AI as a form of murder, because it will cost lives that could have been saved by the AI. It throws some shade at the other side, and that shade, I'm not sure that that's even directed at the other side. I don't think the other side is meant to believe that. I think it's to convince those in the middle and those that already kind of lean toward them to be all in. As far as the murder argument, I think that's worth uh, discussing for just a moment. I'm going to set up their argument a
Oh,
little bit stronger for them and
don't
then take
waste
it
my
down a little
time,
bit.
Joseph. Please don't. I
I'll
will
do it
do
just a
this
little.
out of I will do this out of friendship for you, not because I believe it's valuable. But go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. I will allow myself to be
So
overruled.
it's sensationalist. It's massively sensationalist. First off, if you don't save someone, I mean, if that counts as murder, then Batman absolutely committed murder in the first Batman Begins movie. Um, but yeah, I don't think that one logical jump works, where stopping something from happening counts the same as murder. There's a reason why we have a difference between murder and manslaughter. Murder requires intent, and negligence can't meet that intent unless it's gross and beyond the pale. So
Well,
I don't think that is warranted. And also, one of the problems with AI is the degree to which we don't know what we're doing. We humans are really, really bad at seeing the future. Speaking of intelligence, like really, really bad at seeing the future. And those who think that they're good at seeing the future tend to be the worst of the bunch. If you want to be convinced very thoroughly of this topic, look up anything written by Nassim Taleb. He wrote a really good book called The Black Swan, which I cannot recommend highly enough. Um, if you just want to see the error bars of those who make predictions, then it would, if you did that as an exercise and just tallied up past predictions and then showed the error bar from that, then I don't think you would trust future predictions. When we discuss AI and project what it might do and talk about the lives it might save, okay, it might. What else might it do? And then all of those potential scenarios, including the ones that you didn't see coming, need to be taken into effect to some degree before you make that action. So, maybe it could save everybody who is save everybody from car crashes, save everybody from friendly fire, all the things that he listed. Find some cures for diseases. That's a possibility that's on the table. Another possibility on the table is worse. Could involve everybody dying. So because the future is involved and there's a lot of uncertainty there, you can't say that not doing the thing counts as murder. It's like Pascal's wager, except done badly. Done even worse.
Well, but Joseph, and I understand that you have very sophisticated arguments and that you have a law degree, but have you considered that they wrote that deaths that were preventable by the AI that was prevented from existing is a form of murder? Have you considered that?
Yes,
That they wrote
yes, I have.
that this document says that. Have you considered that?
Yes, and this document is wrong on that. So I have considered it. I have weighed it, measured it, and
Okay.
found wanting.
All right. Shall I start in on energy?
Absolutely. I think this one will probably be
Okay.
a little bit less contentious.
I need a palate cleanser from that. Energy is life. We take it for granted, but without it, we have darkness, starvation, and pain. With it, we have light, safety, and warmth. We believe energy should be in an upward spiral. Energy is the foundational engine of our civilization. The more energy we have, the more people we can have. I'm sorry, this is terrible, but I just thought of nuclear explosions. I'm sorry, I'll go on. And the better everyone's lives can be. We should raise everyone to the energy consumption level we have, then increase our energy 1,000 times, then raise everyone else's energy 1,000 times as well. The current gap in per capita energy use between the smaller developed world and larger developing world is enormous. That
Could you
gap
pause
will
for just a
close.
moment?
Oh, sure, we're going to talk about nuclear bombs.
No, just about
Because
we.
I know that's not what he's saying, but
When he said the machines work for us, right? So he used us before, and both you and I commented briefly on who is included in us. Who is the us? What exactly is this us? It's really interesting that in the paragraph you just read, he defines we, and we is narrow. He says we
it's
should
the
raise
smaller developed
everyone.
world.
Yes, we should raise everyone to the energy consumption level we have, then increase our energy 1,000 times, then raise everyone else's energy 1,000 times as well. So in that case, we really does seem to mean the highly developed Western world.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
that's
I'm willing.
interesting.
I'm personally willing to be generous on that because it seems clear that he's like that. Essentially, what he's saying is, in the smaller developed world, we have amazing, amazing, amazing things going on, and we want to share that with everybody. And
Yeah,
that
yeah,
seems to me to be a
100%.
generous impulse. So, is he a
I
little
like it.
elitist? Yeah, but he wants to spread everything around, I suppose. So,
I
not
just
the
think that
biggest deal to me.
ties back to his comments about the Luddites and also his comments about
Oh
technology
yeah,
works for
for sure.
everyone, works for us. The technology works for us. The technology works for the people who have the technology. And the technology, as we talked about last time, is partially the machines themselves and partially the knowledge about how to operate them and use them to their best advantage. And that knowledge of even how to use the stuff to your best advantage, that's not super spread out even here in the highly developed Western world. I mean, we all have that one friend who actually knows how to use all these crazy online tools to accomplish more in their day. And while we're still feeling really advanced for using copy and paste. So I just
Hmm,
find that really interesting that spreading out that knowledge expands the we. I think I
fair,
like what he's saying, but I think we need to expand the we.
fair. The current gap in per capita energy use between the smaller developed world and larger developing world is enormous. That gap will close. Excuse me, will close either by massively expanding energy production, making everyone better off, or by massively reducing energy production, making everyone worse off. We believe energy need not expand to the detriment of the natural environment. We have the silver bullet for virtually unlimited zero emissions energy today: nuclear fission. In 1973, President Richard Nixon called for Project Independence, the construction of 1,000 nuclear power plants by the year 2000 to achieve complete U.S. energy independence. Nixon was right. We didn't build the plants then, but we can now, anytime we decide we want to. Atomic
Pause.
Energy Commissioner Thomas Murray, or can we finish the fission section?
Yeah.
Okay. Atomic Energy Commissioner Thomas Murray said in 1953, "For years, the splitting atom packaged in weapons has been our main shield against the barbarians. Now, in addition, it is a God-given instrument to do the constructive work of mankind." Murray was right, too. Okay, fission, go.
Fission. Okay, so he comments on the President Richard Nixon calling for Project Independence, the construction of 1,000 nuclear power plants, and the date there is really, really significant. He says that was in 1973. 1973 was the year that OPEC created the oil crisis and basically created an embargo. The oil-producing nations in the Arab states decided to embargo oil, prevent oil exports to the United States. And there were huge long lines of people trying to get to the gas pumps, and it was monopolistic behavior being used to for political purposes in order to change policy. The free market operates on the idea that we're all trying to help each other. Like the whole idea is, I'm going to offer you something, and you don't have to say yes. But if I can convince you to say yes by offering you something that you would say yes to, then we can reach a deal where both of us benefit, and we can do that. We do that all the time. And so the Arab states were selling oil to the United States, and there was a lot of handshaking and congratulation going on. But international actors tend to be, all these states tend to be frenemies at best, where sometimes we trade and sometimes we go to war, just like the Vikings. Sometimes you go out on a trading expedition, it turns into a raiding expedition, and then you switch it right back into a trading expedition. This is how we roll. So I think that the pain and suffering that was caused by that oil embargo, and the U.S. realizing how vulnerable they were because of the market, because of their dependence on the market for something that they desperately needed, energy. I mean, we see this also with the relationship Germany currently has with Russia. They were importing tons and tons and tons of natural gas in order to heat their homes because they got scared of nuclear power. Rightly or wrongly, they closed nuclear power plants, relied on natural gas. They did not produce the natural gas themselves, which meant they were dependent on Russia. And now they are dependent on Russia in order to heat their homes. And, I like the free market because trade is wonderful, comparative advantage is a real thing, it's a way to get richer. But one of the downsides that he's really not talking about is interdependence means dependence, and dependence means vulnerability. And some vulnerability is appropriate, but when you're dealing with frenemies or, the insecurities that are just part of life, a little bit more security is sometimes nice, and a little bit more independence is sometimes nice.
And any thoughts on fission writ large?
Fusion writ
Fission.
large. Oh, my word. So there's multiple ways to build a fission power plant. The way that we do it right now is by having uranium fuel rods, and we move them closer together mechanically. We physically move them closer together in a giant water bath, and then that water heats up. We use the water to create steam. You can run into a situation where that water, which is also acting as a coolant, if it's not there, then you can get hotter and hotter and hotter and have that runaway problem where it can go critical. And critical is not the right word, excuse me. But you basically get a thermal runaway. There are types of reactors like the molten salt reactors, thorium-style reactors, where they can't break that way. So you don't run into the problem where they become a pressure cooker ready to explode. Like, they can't do it. And so I think that is safer and better. I like that it's possible to make nuclear power plants. I live fairly close to one, actually, one of the bigger ones in the United States. And I like having a nuclear power plant around. I think the energy independence aspect is really, really cool. And I know that the people who run them go to great lengths to make sure that they're as safe as possible. If you're in a place with no natural disasters, where you don't have a lot of earthquakes, tsunamis, floods, or hurricanes, then yeah, absolutely, use nuclear power. I still get a little bit nervous about nuclear power because they have a fail condition, which, even if it's very rare, is pretty darn massive. So I think if we can push more research into things like molten salt reactors, thorium reactors, then ones that don't have that catastrophic fail condition, then that's way, way, way better. And then you have the benefits of the independence, and you don't have the problems of a 1 in a million chance of going kaboom. So that's my thoughts on that.
Fair enough. Shall I go on to fusion?
Yes.
We believe a second energy silver bullet is coming, nuclear fusion. We should build that as well. The same bad ideas that effectively outlawed fission are going to try to outlaw fusion. We should not let them. We believe. We're going to move on to the environment. So I don't know if you want to say anything about fusion. I mean, I hope they're right. No real comment.
I hope so too. Fusion is really challenging technically. I've seen some stuff that looks really cool. There was one really cool project that was basically launching two pulses of like two little plasma rings at each other really, really fast, and then creating pulsed fusion. I thought that was really, really cool. I also listened to somebody who seemed like they really knew what they were talking about, saying that that was technically impossible and or a problem. So I don't know. It'll happen when it happens. It seems to always be 20 years around the corner. But if it does happen, then my word, our oceans are mostly made out of hydrogen, and that's the fuel. So by all means, go forth.
We believe that there is no inherent conflict between the techno-capital machine and the natural environment. Per capita US carbon emissions are lower now than they were 100 years ago, even without nuclear power. We believe technology is the solution to environmental degradation and crisis. A technologically advanced society improves the natural environment. A technologically stagnant society ruins it. If you want to see environmental devastation, visit a former communist country. The socialist USSR was far worse for the natural environment than the capitalist US. Google the Aral Sea. We believe a technologically stagnant society has limited energy at the cost of environmental ruin. A technologically advanced society has unlimited clean energy for everyone. My only reaction is again, this is a little bit idealistic. I think, he can say that there's no inherent conflict between the techno-capital machine and the natural environment, but that doesn't mean that there won't be some conflicts along the way. And there will be, for instance, the mining of rare earth metals is, I guess, exhibit A. More arguments could probably be made, but I'm just sort of pointing out the issue here, right? Second, he's eliding and just sort of omitting the distinction between technology and society, right? So when he thinks of environmental devastation, he thinks of a former communist country like the USSR. Okay, well, you've now shifted away from technology and into the realm of society, culture, and government. And I know that he kind of wants to fold the two into one another by calling them the techno-capital machine, which combines markets, which does imply a certain commercial, social, and cultural and governmental structure alongside technology. But that's not what he says here. He says, we believe technology is the solution to environmental degradation and crisis. And it's just not clear to me that he's invoking a lot of cultural, societal, governmental factors and elements that are not really discussed here in this manifesto. So I want to say, yeah, there's some good stuff here, but he's galloping through things extremely quickly, and he is covering more ground. How to put it right? He's galloping through things too quickly and not covering them in enough detail. And there are many devils in the details here. Many.
There are certainly devils in the details. I want to make the case for this point because I actually do think that this one is largely true. The reason why, so the largest industry in the world in, when was this, 1800 or 1900, was whaling. Moby Dick is a story about whaling, and the reason why people hunted whales was not for their meat, it was for their fat. If you killed a whale, you could essentially mine it for its oil, and then you'd bring that oil home, and it was a really bright, clean fuel source for lighting. So we had whales, and we started whaling like crazy, and we were killing whales, and the whale numbers around the world started depleting, and we're killing the whales. That's a bad thing. And then what saved the whales was John D. Rockefeller and kerosene. People switched from whale oil and essentially killed the whale hunting industry. I mean, at least certain aspects of it, hunting them for other purposes is the thing that lasted longer. And there's still certain places that hunt whales. There's legalized whale hunts in Iceland, I believe. But at certain times of the year, it's tightly regulated. The thing that the saving of the whales is it happened because of oil. And it also at the same time, we used to heat our homes largely with wood. Wood is a renewable resource, but not at the scale that we were using it. Sherwood Forest was completely deforested, almost didn't exist, in order to make charcoal, in order to make steel, because we used to make steel with charcoal. But then coal was discovered, new technology opened up, mines opened up. Shipping coal is really hard to do that unless you have doing really, really heavy stuff. So England invented first a system of canals that carried the stuff all over the place, and suddenly the trees start coming back. And then eventually the railroads, and then the transportation all through there. So coal brought with it a whole bunch of environmental issues. Spring cleaning is a thing because of coal burning stoves. People used to get so much smut of coal dust and nasty oily particulate everywhere that you'd have to clean every spring after a winter's worth of burning coal. You basically, as soon as the coal stove was shut down for the winter, in the spring you would clean absolutely everything because everything was grimy and nasty. So it's been a catch-22. Because of switching to coal and fossil fuels, there are more trees in North America now than I believe there have been for like 200 or 300 years. We live in a strange way where the abundance created by technology has this ability to shift us from natural resources that we're overusing to new things that eventually might create problems, but then we move on to something new. And also, you have to be rich to a certain level before you really care about the environment. Or the circle of environment that you really care about moves outward as you get richer. It's easy to care about your bed being clean and your one spot being clean, no matter how poor you are. But that circle gets a little bit bigger the wealthier you are. And I think the connection between technology making everybody wealthier, the techno-capitalist machine making everybody wealthier, which means that you can now have the luxury of being concerned about the environment. And I do think that technical solutions exist for a lot of the things, like you mentioned the mining of rare earth minerals. A lot of the rare earth minerals, like neodymium, are actually not that rare. Finding them in concentrations that are worth mining is a different thing. And mostly the issues with those minerals tend to be more human issues, like human rights issues, say with the mining of cobalt in Africa, more than environmental. I think that our impact long term is probably going to go down through the increase of technology.
You do cite two examples, right? Whale oil and then the move from charcoal to coal, where there was at least some environmental benefit in the tech switch. But it seems to me that in both, there's also at least some environmental drawback in the tech switch as well. And I hasten to emphasize as well, right? Not completely destroying Sherwood Forest seems pretty great, but, coal mining doesn't seem like, the most environmentally friendly thing either. And, neither does mining out all the iron necessary to build all the electric street lamps in the world. So, and my point is not to say I'm not arguing that, oh boy, technological advancement is always bad for the environment and we should never technologically advance. But I am saying that there's just this naked assertion here that, oh boy, technology is the solution to environmental degradation and crisis, and it's just that is not an accurate statement. That is a partially accurate statement.
Yeah, I think what you're highlighting is that there's positives and negatives. I mean, you save the forests, but you also have to do spring cleaning because there's nasty coal smoke everywhere. Although we're still burning coal for most of the world's power, and we don't have to do spring cleaning anymore. So even though we're still using the same fuel source, we've gotten way, way, way better at it. And the mechanism, that what we mean when we say get better, is the technology improved. We've done things like capture the particulate matter on the way out, using static charges and filters and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, we're still using coal. right now. That is the more than likely the power that you used to charge your phone this morning more than likely came from a coal power plant. Just statistically, that's probably what happened. So the technology improved to the point where we don't have that issue anymore. I think whenever anyone points out that there is cost and benefit to the change, which one leads out? Was the net effect a change for the better or for the worse? And I think for both of those, it's been for the better.
Sorry, I didn't catch
You
that. Do you
ready
want
to?
to give it another shot?
Yeah, absolutely. I think whenever one makes the calculation, there's a positive and a negative to switching to kerosene. There's a positive and a negative to switching to coal. And in both cases, I think it's been net benefit to the environment. Um, we
I'm
are coming
still
up
not
on.
able to hear you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Are you able to hear me now?
Although it seems like it might be a problem at my end, which is strange because I changed no settings.
Hello?
Oh, there we go. Please go on.
Indeed. I think that that it's important to make the net calculation when we're talking about these changes because with coal, we're still using coal. The power that you more than likely used to charge your phone this morning coming out of that wall more than likely was the result of a coal power plant. Just going by the numbers, just that is statistically more likely than not. But we don't have the soot haze. We don't have those pea soup fogs like London used to have. We don't live in that kind of environmental degradation because of technological improvements in the way that we burn coal. We're a lot better at pulling particulate matter out of it. We're a lot better at burning it hot and clean. We're a lot better at getting the power out of it so we can use less coal for more electricity. And we no longer heat our homes with it, so we no longer have to do that specific kind of spring cleaning. I think on balance, these changes have been net improvements for the environment. And I think looking forward, if we project that line forward, and I think we reasonably can, I mean, future is not known and worse things could come, and who knows what people in the future will choose to do. But I think that this idea that technology improving equals environment improving is a reasonable statement.
Could be true, and I hope it's true. That's my final take.
It has been close to an hour, and I think we've only made it through 4 of these sections, similar to last time. It's looking...
3.
3? Are you kidding me?
So we're probably looking at 4 parts to this, maybe 5 if the abundance section is pretty abundant. Although not Utopia, but close enough is happily quite short. So we might be able to do it in 4.
Okay, awesome. That sounds good to me. Dear viewer, you have an opportunity to look forward to something specific. We are going to be going further through this Techno-Optimist Manifesto in future installments of the podcast. As always, please hit the like button below if you're watching this on YouTube, and please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We look forward to seeing you next time.